It was April 17th, 2003. I remember the date not because I wanted to, but because it carved itself into my memory the way shrapnel bites into bone and never quite works itself out. I'd been in Iraq only a few months, barely adjusted to the rhythms of patrols, the stinging heat, and that strange blend of boredom and terror that soldiers know too well. Every day felt like waiting for something to happen, and when it did, you wished you could go back to the waiting. The air that morning was thick with dust, the kind that seeps into everything, your clothes, your eyes, the cracks of your weapon, even your teeth. We'd been running convoy patrols outside Fallujah, where the air smelled like burned oil and diesel more often than fresh air. The Humvee engines coughed smoke that clung to us long after we stepped out, and my throat always felt raw, like I'd swallowed a mouthful of sandpaper. I remember gripping my rifle a little too tightly that day, my knuckles aching against the metal. I'd stopped feeling the weight of it months ago, but the comfort of having it pressed against my chest hadn't left me. The weapon was more than steel and ammo. It was the thin thread between me and never seeing home again. Our squad leader, Staff Sergeant Delgado, sat in the passenger seat up front, quiet as always. He wasn't the yelling type. His voice was low, steady, and that's what made you listen. When he said something, you leaned in, because you knew he wasn't wasting breath. "Stay sharp," he muttered over the headset as the Humvee rattled over the cracked road. Eyes open, ears open. They're not sleeping today. None of us asked what he meant. We never did. In Iraq, you didn't need explanations. You just needed to be ready. The town looked dead as we rolled through. Houses with bullet-pocked walls slouched into each other, windows blown out, doors hanging loose. Stray dogs picked through trash piles on the roadside, ribs showing, tails stiff. A few children darted away when they saw us coming, their bare feet kicking up dust as they vanished into alleyways. Sometimes they'd wave, sometimes they'd throw rocks. You learned not to expect smiles. Then there were the smells. God, the smells. Burnt tires, human waste, rotting meat from the market that hadn't seen a customer in weeks. It all mixed with the stink of gun oil and sweat inside our Humvee. Sometimes I think I can still smell it, even now, years later. It sneaks up on me, at a gas station, when the diesel fumes hang too heavy, or in an alleyway back home where trash has sat too long in the sun. One breath and I'm back there. We rolled to a stop near an intersection where the asphalt gave way to broken dirt. The radio crackled with static, and for a moment nobody spoke. The silence pressed down heavier than the body armor on my chest. My ears buzzed with it, like the pause before a thunderclap. "Dismount," Delgado finally said. We spilled out, boots hitting the dirt with a thud. The heat hit me harder than the weight of my gear, like stepping into an oven. Sweat prickled under my helmet before we'd even formed up. My buddy Ramirez muttered something about frying eggs on the hood of the Humvee. His jokes were always half-hearted, but we clung to them like lifelines. Eyes up. "Ramirez," I hissed, scanning the rooftops. "I'm looking." "I'm looking," he said, raising his rifle toward the shadows of a second-story window. The wind picked up then, blowing grit into our faces. I pulled my scarf tighter around my mouth, squinting against the sting. For a second, I thought I heard something beneath the hum of engines and the whistle of wind, a sound, low, distant like a moan. But when I turned my head, all I saw were the ruins of buildings and the shimmer of heat waves rising off the dirt. I told myself it was nothing. Out here, the wind played tricks, and your brain filled in the silence with whatever fears you carried. But still, my gut tightened. We swept the intersection, Delgado pointing us into positions with hand signals, every move silent and deliberate. The silence between us was something I'd gotten used to. Whispered orders, a nod, the glint of eyes behind goggles. That was enough. Talking too much made you careless, and careless got you killed. The ground felt soft beneath my boots, patches of mud clinging heavy with every step. The Tigris had overflowed not long before, leaving the outskirts damp and reeking of stagnant water. Each step sucked at my soles, pulling, like the earth itself wanted to drag me under. Then came the first real sound, a scream. It cut through the air sharp, raw, and wrong. Not like a battle cry, not like the panicked shout of civilians. No, it was a soldier's scream. I knew that sound. It carried pain, terror, and something else. Something I can't describe except to say it froze my blood in place. We froze too. Every rifle snapped toward the direction it came from, a ruined building to the east, half collapsed and leaning into the street. The scream came again, echoing off the walls, bouncing until it felt like it was coming from everywhere. "Contact?" Ramirez whispered. "Hold," Delgado said, his voice low, calm, as if calm could cut through what we were hearing. But calm didn't stop my pulse from hammering in my ears. My mouth went dry and my hands trembled against the rifle. I told myself to breathe, to keep my focus. But that scream kept digging into me, pulling up images of friends I'd lost, of the way they'd sounded in their last moments. We waited for gunfire, for shadows in the windows, for the flash of an RPG, but nothing came. Only the scream, fading now into sobs, then silence. A silence worse than the scream itself. Delgado looked at us one by one, his eyes hard. He didn't need to speak, but he did anyway. "We check it out," I wanted to protest. Every instinct in me screamed no. It was bait. It had to be. Insurgents lured patrols into traps like this all the time. But orders were orders, and more than that, it was a soldier's voice we'd heard. Leaving him behind wasn't an option we could live with. We moved toward the building, rifles raised, boots sinking into the mud. My breath rasped in my helmet, too loud in my ears. The smell of gunpowder clung to the air, fresh, sharp, like a shot had been fired not long before. Somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew this was going to be bad. Worse than bad. The kind of bad you don't walk away from the same, and that was before we stepped inside. You ever walk into a place and feel, instantly, that you shouldn't be there? Like the air itself is warning you, thicker, heavier, buzzing with something you can't name. That's what it felt like stepping into that ruined building. The daylight outside turned to a dim haze as we crossed the threshold, the dust inside so thick it looked like smoke. My boots crunched over broken plaster and glass, each step sounding louder than it should have. The first thing I noticed was the smell. God, I'll never forget it. Burnt wiring, moldy water, and something coppery that clung to the back of my throat. Blood. Not fresh, but not old either. Just enough to remind you life had ended here not long ago. "Stack up," Delgado ordered, his voice a whisper. We moved in 2 by 2, rifles raised, scanning every corner, every shadow. The walls had holes big enough to fire through, bullet scars spreading like spiderwebs. Ceiling tiles sagged overhead, water dripping down from somewhere above. My heart was hammering so loud I swore it echoed off the walls. We reached the first room, a hollowed-out husk that might have once been a kitchen. Rusted pots were scattered on the ground, mixed with children's toys half melted by fire. Ramirez nudged one with his boot, a small plastic truck. Wheel missing, and the clatter it made seemed deafening. "Jesus, man," I hissed. "Relax," he muttered back, though his voice cracked. We pushed on. Then it came again, that scream. It wasn't far now, muffled, like it was buried under the rubble somewhere deeper in the building. But this time it wasn't just pain. It was rage, drawn out and guttural, like an animal being slaughtered. It rose and fell, echoing in ways that made it impossible to pin down. Delgado froze us with a raised fist. His jaw clenched, but his eyes stayed calm, steady like they always did. "Basement," he whispered. My stomach dropped. Basements were death traps, one way in, one way out. If they had us pinned down there, we'd never see daylight again. But we didn't argue. We just followed. The stairwell was narrow, concrete walls stained dark. My boots slipped on grit as we descended, the air turning colder, damper, carrying that smell stronger now. Blood and rot, thick enough to taste. The light from above barely reached, so we clicked on our weapon-mounted flashlights. Beams cut through the dark, bouncing off wet walls and twisted pipes. At the bottom, the corridor opened into a wide, low-ceilinged basement. Rubble piled against the far wall where part of the building had collapsed, blocking one corner. The scream came from there, a human voice for certain. But warped somehow, hoarse, broken, almost inhuman in the way it stretched out the syllables of agony. "Cover," Delgado ordered, motioning us into position. We fanned out, rifles trained on the rubble, waiting for movement. "Hello?" Ramirez called before anyone could stop him. His voice echoed off the walls, swallowed by silence. For a long second there was nothing. No scream, no sound. Just the drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling, then faint and trembling. "Help. Please." It was English. Broken, rasping, but clear. Definitely a soldier's voice. We all exchanged looks. My throat tightened. It's one thing to hear screams and think it might be bait. It's another to hear your own language. The desperation in it too real to fake. Identify yourself, Delgado called out, his voice firm but not unkind. Silence then. I can't.
Move, please!
The rubble shifted slightly, a small shower of dust falling. I felt my grip tighten on the rifle. Every instinct told me this was wrong. The voice was too faint, too strange. I'd heard wounded men before, and something about this was off, like the pauses weren't natural. But then again, what the hell did I know? Trauma makes people sound different. Delgado motioned two of us, me and Ramirez, forward. Check it out. We'll cover. My legs felt like lead as I approached. Each step closer, the smell grew stronger, that sickly metallic stench mixing with rot. My flashlight beam shook as it traced over broken beams, bricks, twisted rebar. The rubble pile was high, maybe 10 feet, jagged edges casting long shadows. Where are you? Ramirez asked. Here. The voice groaned, deeper now, vibrating through the rubble like it came from the stones themselves. Please, pull me out. We crouched near the pile, scanning for any sign of movement. Then I saw it, a hand, or what I thought was a hand. Pale, caked in dirt, fingers twitching weakly from between two slabs of concrete. My stomach turned at the sight. It was swollen, the skin torn raw, nails blackened. Holy shit, Ramirez whispered. He's alive. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But something in me recoiled at the sight. The fingers twitched, yes, but not like a man struggling. It was rhythmic, almost deliberate, each twitch too slow, too steady. I swallowed hard. Sarge, something's not right. Before Delgado could answer, the hand jerked violently, clawing at the air. The scream burst out again, so loud in the confined space it rattled my teeth. My ears rang, and for a second I thought the ceiling would cave in. We stumbled back, weapons raised. My light caught the hand again, now pressing hard against the rubble, straining. Dust and pebbles rained down as the stones shifted, groaning like they were about to give way. Back! Back! Delgado barked. We retreated, rifles trained, hearts slamming in our chests. The scream kept coming, ragged and endless, as if the lungs behind it had no limit. My whole body trembled, sweat burning into my eyes. Do we dig him out? Ramirez yelled, panic rising. Delgado's face was pale in the beam of his flashlight. His lips moved slowly, like he was choosing each word with care. Not yet. The rubble shifted again, heavier this time, slabs sliding as if something beneath them was pushing up. And then we saw it, not a face, not fully, just the glimpse of one. An eye, wide and bloodshot, staring out from the cracks. Human, yes, but wrong. Too red, too wild, the kind of stare that makes your gut turn cold. And the skin around it, blistered, torn, streaked with black. The voice that came out then wasn't a scream. It was a laugh. Low, broken, scraping like metal on stone. Every one of us froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Then the voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come." My blood ran ice cold. My finger hovered on the trigger, itching to fire, but I didn't. I couldn't. It was like my body refused to move. For the first time since I'd known him, Delgado looked shaken. His eyes darted to us, then back to the rubble, where the hand twitched, the eye glared, and the laugh kept bubbling out like something dredged from hell. We didn't know it then, but that was only the beginning. I don't remember who fired first. Maybe it was Ramirez, maybe it was me. Hell, maybe the thing in the rubble moved in a way none of us wanted to see. All I know is that the silence shattered with a burst of gunfire, muzzle flashes lighting up the basement like lightning in a storm. The sound was deafening in that concrete tomb, echoing so loud it rattled my skull. My ears rang instantly, drowning everything in a dull, high-pitched whine. The rubble exploded in a shower of dust and stone. Whatever was in there screamed again. Not human this time, not even close. It was a howl that seemed to vibrate through the walls, a sound so deep it rattled my chest and made my stomach lurch. My flashlight beam caught that eye one last time, glowing red like a coal before the pile collapsed fully, burying it again. Move. Delgado roared, grabbing Ramirez by the collar and yanking him back toward the stairs. Out now! We didn't need telling twice. We scrambled up the stairwell, boots slipping on grit, lungs burning from dust. My rifle banged against the wall as I pushed past, heart slamming against my ribs. Behind us, the screams rose again, louder, chasing us up the steps like a storm. When we burst into daylight, I thought I'd finally breathe. But the air outside was no safer. The street was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your instincts scream before your ears can. The Humvees sat idling where we'd left them, engines rumbling, exhaust fumes curling in the heat. But the town itself, it felt abandoned, as if every living soul had vanished. We spread out automatically, forming a perimeter, rifles sweeping across rooftops and alleyways. Dust devils twisted down the road, carrying scraps of trash that clattered along the cracked asphalt. My hands shook so badly I had to tighten my grip just to keep the barrel steady. "Report," Delgado barked, his voice cutting through the ringing in my ears. "All accounted for," I managed, though my throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming too. Ramirez spat in the dirt, his face pale, eyes wide. "What the fuck was that, Sarge?" That wasn't a man." "Shut it," Delgado snapped, though I saw the tremor in his jaw. "We regroup. We get out. We don't talk about it here." The last part wasn't an order. It was a plea, and none of us argued. We mounted up fast, doors slamming, gear rattling. I slid into the back seat, hands trembling as I chambered a fresh round. My mouth tasted of metal, and the stench of dust and gunpowder clung to my nose. When the Humvee lurched forward, I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind in that basement. The convoy moved down the broken road, slow but steady. The sun was sinking, the sky painted in streaks of orange and red, casting long shadows across the ruins. Every corner looked like an ambush waiting to happen. Every rooftop felt like eyes were watching us. Inside the vehicle, no one spoke for a long time. Just the hum of the engine, the rattle of gear, and the occasional cough of static from the radio. My ears still rang, dulling everything, making the silence even heavier. Finally, Ramirez broke. "I saw its eye." "You all saw it. Don't tell me I'm crazy." Nobody answered. We just stared at the road ahead, knuckles white on our rifles. "It laughed," he whispered. "Ain't no man laughs like that." "Shut up, Ramirez," I muttered, but my voice shook. The truth was, he was only saying what we were all thinking. That scream, that laugh, it didn't belong to anything human. I wanted to deny it, chalk it up to trauma, to the chaos of war, but deep down, I knew. We all knew. We drove until night fell. Out here, darkness didn't creep. It dropped, fast and heavy, swallowing everything. The only light came from our headlights and the flicker of lanterns in distant homes. The road turned rough, potholes jarring us in our seats, and every bump made me feel like the world itself was trying to shake us loose. That's when we heard it again. At first, I thought it was the wind, whistling through the broken buildings. But then it grew louder, clearer, a scream. The same scream we'd left behind in that basement. My blood turned to ice. "Contact rear," someone shouted over the comms. I twisted around, rifle raised to the back window. The night was thick, shadows stretching. But there, behind us, in the headlights of the last Humvee, I saw movement. A figure. It staggered in the road, hunched, limping, but fast. Too fast. Each step kicked up dust, arms thrashing as it screamed, the sound piercing through the roar of engines. "Engage!" Delgado barked. The rear Humvee opened fire, red tracers ripping through the night. Muzzle flashes lit the road in staccato bursts. The figure jerked with each impact, pieces flying, but it didn't fall. It just screamed louder, closing the distance. "Go! Go!" Delgado shouted. Our driver slammed the accelerator, the Humvee lurching forward. My body slammed against the door as we tore down the road, tires spitting dirt. Behind us, the gunfire grew frantic, the scream rising higher, until finally, suddenly, it cut off. Silence. "Target down?" Delgado demanded. The rear Humvee didn't answer at first. Then a voice shaking. "We hit it." It fell, but a pause, static crackling. It was still moving. My stomach turned to lead. We didn't slow, didn't stop. We just kept driving faster and faster until the broken road stretched out before us in an endless blur. The night pressed in on every side, headlights carving tunnels through the dark. My chest heaved, breath ragged inside my helmet, and no matter how much I blinked, I couldn't shake the image of that eye, burning red, staring, laughing, hours later. When we finally made it back to base, we looked like ghosts. Dust caked to our faces, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling. The other units asked what happened, why we looked like hell had followed us home. Delgado shut them down. Routine patrol. Took some fire, nothing we couldn't handle, and that was the end of it, at least, officially. But that night, as we sat in the barracks, the lantern light flickering against the walls, nobody slept. We sat in silence, the weight of it crushing. Now and then Ramirez would mutter under his breath. "It laughed." I swear it laughed, until Delgado barked at him to shut it, Me? I just stared at my rifle, hands still shaking, and listened. Listened to the silence outside, broken only by the distant hum of generators. But in that silence, I swore I heard it again, faint, carried on the wind. The scream. It followed us, and in my gut, I knew this wasn't over. You'd think once we made it back to base, we'd be safe. That's the lie every soldier tells himself, that the wire, the sandbags, the guard towers keep the war out. But sometimes the war doesn't sit outside the gates. Sometimes it follows you in, crawling under your skin until it owns you. That night, none of us slept. Some of the guys tried, rolling onto their cots, boots still on, rifles propped nearby. But the restlessness was thick, like static in the air, buzzing through the barracks. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall, helmet off, rifle across my lap. Every creak of the building, every shout from another unit outside made me flinch. My ears still rang from the gunfire, but worse was the memory of that scream. It played in my head, looping, warping, sometimes sounding like a cry for help, sometimes like laughter. Ramirez paced the room like a caged animal. "We should have finished it," he muttered. "We should have made damn sure." "Shut it," Delgado snapped from his bunk. His voice was calm, but there was a crack in it this time. "What you saw, what we all saw, it doesn't leave this room. You get me?" No one answered. "You get me?" he repeated louder. "Roger," we said, voices low, hollow. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could bury it like the rubble buried that thing. But some truths don't stay buried. It started the next evening. We were on watch rotation when one of the outer patrols dragged in a stretcher. I was at the gate when I saw them coming, 2 MPs red-faced and sweating as they carried someone in uniform, covered in dust and blood. My heart froze. The man on the stretcher was American, or at least what was left of him looked it. His uniform was shredded, patches barely hanging on, body twisted like he'd been pulled through hell. His face was caked in dried blood, but beneath it I could see eyes wide open, staring at nothing. "Where'd you find him?" Delgado demanded as the MPs staggered past. "Old structure out east," one of them panted. "Collapsed building." We heard screaming. Thought it was one of ours left behind. Dug him out. My stomach dropped. The MPs didn't notice. They just hauled the stretcher toward the medical tent. The man's hand, swollen, skin torn, hung off the side. It twitched. Not random, not weak, but steady, rhythmic. Exactly like the one I'd seen in the rubble. I whispered, "No." "No, no," and backed up, my rifle clattering against the gatepost. Ramirez saw it too. His face went white. "Sarge, that's him." "That's the fucking thing." Delgado's eyes narrowed. He didn't say anything, just clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth would crack. We followed, against every instinct screaming to run the other way. The medics cut the uniform from the man's body, working fast under the lantern glow. His skin was covered in burns and blisters, black veins crawling out from the wounds like ink in water. He lay still, chest rising shallow, eyes rolling. Then he whispered, "Help, me." Every hair on my body stood up. The same voice, the same broken rasp. The medics froze. One leaned down, shining a light into his pupils. "He's alive, barely. Get me fluids now." "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "No, he's not alive. That's not him. It's not—" "Shut it," Delgado barked. His voice cracked like a whip, silencing me, silencing even Ramirez. "He's one of ours. We don't leave him. We carry him." I stared at him, heart pounding. His words didn't sound like orders. They sounded like he was trying to convince himself. The medics worked frantically, hooking up IV lines, cleaning wounds. The whole tent filled with that smell again. Blood, rot, something sour that burned the back of my throat. I wanted to gag. My palms itched with the urge to raise my rifle, to end it right there, but I couldn't move. None of us could, and then he screamed. The sound blasted through the tent, rattling metal trays, sending instruments clattering to the floor. It was the same scream from the rubble, from the road, tearing through the night like a blade. Everyone staggered back, hands to ears, faces contorted in pain. The medics dropped their tools, one of them stumbling into the lantern, nearly knocking it over. I fell to my knees, head splitting, vision swimming. The scream drilled into my skull, into my bones, and through the agony I heard words woven into it. Not English, not Arabic, something older. A language that felt wrong just to hear. Then, silence. The man lay still on the stretcher, chest heaving, eyes rolled back white. The medics looked shaken but kept working, muttering about shock, trauma, head injury. They didn't hear what we heard. They didn't see the red glow that flickered in his pupils for just a second before it vanished. Delgado stood stiff as stone, fists clenched, eyes locked on the stretcher. Then he turned to us. "Guard him." "What?" Ramirez's voice cracked. "Sarge, you saw— I said guard him!" Delgado barked, louder than I'd ever heard him. His face was pale, sweat dripping, but his tone left no room for argument. So we did. That night, I sat outside the medical tent with Ramirez, rifles across our knees, lantern light flickering against the canvas. The base was quiet except for distant chatter, boots crunching gravel, and the ever-present hum of generators. But from inside the tent we heard it, low, steady. Not screams now, whispers. The soldier whispered constantly, never stopping, voice raspy, guttural. Sometimes it was English, sometimes it was something else. I leaned closer once, trying to make out the words, and instantly regretted it. He was whispering names. Our names. I froze, breath caught in my throat. He spoke them slowly, dragging them out, savoring them like a prayer. Ramirez heard too. His eyes went wide and he muttered a prayer under his breath, clutching the rosary he kept in his pocket. I wanted to run. Wanted to wake Delgado, demand we put a bullet in him and end this nightmare, but I couldn't move. My legs felt cemented, my chest heavy. The whispers pressed down like a weight, filling the air, seeping into my head. Hours passed like that. Every flicker of the lantern cast shadows that looked too long, too sharp. Every time I blinked, I swore I saw movement inside the tent, the stretcher shifting, the outline of the man sitting up. But when I snapped my eyes open, he was still lying there, whispering. Always whispering. By dawn I was broken, exhausted, shaking, hollow. The whispers hadn't stopped. The medics said he was stable. They said he'd make it, but I knew better. We carried him anyway. We carried him into the daylight, into the base, into our minds. And deep down, we all knew the same thing. Whatever we'd pulled from that rubble, it wasn't ours anymore. It never was. You want to know the truth? The worst part wasn't the screams out there on the road, or even when we found him under the rubble. The worst part was what came after, when we thought the danger was behind the wire, when we thought we were safe. That's when it truly began. The soldier, if I can still call him that, stayed in the medical tent for 3 more days. We stood guard in shifts. None of us wanted to, but Delgado kept us there, watching, listening. Each night the whispers came. Sometimes it was English, sometimes not, but always clear enough that we knew what he was saying. He'd call our names one by one, dragging them out like he was tasting them. He'd laugh when we flinched. The medics never noticed, not the same way we did. They said he was delirious, brain damaged, maybe just echoing back words he'd overheard. They didn't hear the patterns. They didn't notice how he said our names before we even walked into the tent. By the second night, Ramirez started to unravel. He refused to go near the stretcher, muttering prayers under his breath, clutching that rosary so tight his knuckles bled. "He's not a man anymore," he whispered to me once, eyes wide and wild. "He's wearing the skin, but it's not him. It's something else, something old." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it was just trauma, just war twisting our heads. But I couldn't, because every time I looked at the thing on that stretcher, I knew he was right. The third night, it happened. I was on watch with 2 others, sitting outside the tent, lantern flickering. The whispers had been going for hours, low and steady, crawling under the canvas like smoke. I was half asleep, eyelids heavy, when the sound changed. It wasn't whispers anymore. It was singing, not a tune I knew, something guttural, ancient, with notes that seemed to sink into my bones and rattle them loose. My skin prickled and every hair on my body stood up. The other guys shifted uncomfortably, looking at each other with fear in their eyes. Then the scream came. It ripped through the tent, louder than anything before, so loud it blew out the lantern. We scrambled to our feet, rifles raised, ears ringing. Inside, the medics shouted, panicked, their voices drowned by that endless howl. We burst in. The stretcher was empty. The medics were on the ground, writhing, clutching their heads. One of them had blood streaming from his nose, the other convulsing like he'd been electrocuted. And the man, the soldier, was gone. "Search," Delgado roared, storming into the tent with his rifle drawn. His face was pale, eyes wide, but his voice carried that same command it always did. We tore through the camp, boots pounding gravel, flashlights slicing through the dark. Shouts echoed, radios crackled. Men poured out of their barracks, confused, armed, terrified. And above it all we heard it, the scream. It wasn't behind us anymore. It was everywhere. It echoed from the rooftops, the alleys, the walls. It circled the base like a storm, rising and falling, never stopping. Every man froze at some point, staring into the shadows, convinced the sound was right behind him. Some fired blindly into the dark, muzzle flashes lighting the night sky. I saw Ramirez on his knees, sobbing, rocking back and forth. "It's in us," he kept muttering. "It's already in us." I grabbed him, shook him, shouted for him to get up. But his eyes were glassy, unfocused, like he wasn't seeing me anymore. And then the lights went out. The generators died with a sputter, plunging the base into darkness. For a moment there was only the starlight above, cold and distant, and the screams below, circling, closing in. What happened next is a blur. Gunfire erupted, men shouting, screaming. I saw shapes moving in the dark, figures darting between tents too fast, too twisted to be men. Their eyes glowed faint red just for a second, before vanishing again. Every shadow became a threat, every sound a warning. I fired until my rifle clicked empty, hands shaking, sweat pouring down my face. I reloaded on instinct, breath ragged, ears ringing. The screams didn't stop. They grew. They layered over each other, hundreds of voices, until it felt like the entire desert was crying out. At some point, Delgado grabbed me, pulled me behind a barrier. His face was streaked with blood. His or someone else's, I don't know. His voice shook for the first time I'd ever heard. "We can't stop it," he said. "We carry it now. You understand? We brought it with us." I wanted to ask what he meant. But before I could, an explosion ripped through the far side of the base. Fire lit the night, tents collapsing, men screaming. The air filled with smoke and dust, the stench of burning flesh mixing with diesel. I coughed, eyes watering, vision blurred. When I came to, it was dawn. The base was in ruins. Bodies lay scattered, twisted, unrecognizable. Smoke still curled from collapsed structures. The medics were dead. Ramirez was gone. Delgado. I never saw him again. I stumbled through the wreckage, ears still ringing, head pounding. The screaming had stopped, but the silence was worse. It pressed in, heavy, suffocating, broken only by the distant cry of a muezzin calling the morning prayer from a village far away. I was the only one left. They pulled me out days later. Wandering the desert road, rifle gone, eyes hollow. They said I'd been muttering to myself, repeating the same words over and over. They wrote it off as combat stress, shell shock. But I remember what I said. We carried him anyway. And I've carried him ever since. Even now. Years later, sitting here with the lantern light flickering on these walls, I can still hear it. That scream. Sometimes soft, sometimes loud. Sometimes whispering my name when I'm alone at night. People ask me what the worst part of Iraq was. The heat, the IEDs, the firefights. No, it was the screaming soldier, the one we carried home, and the one who never left.